This is Michael Woodward, and this is episode 100 of the Jumblethink podcast.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Jumblethink podcast, a podcast focused on telling the stories of dreamers, makers, innovators, and influencers. Along the way, we'll give you some tips and ideas of how you can chase your own big idea and dreams and create the world you want to live in. Our guest on today's episode is Lee Caraher. More about Lee in a moment. Today's show is brought to you by FreshBooks.com. Get a free 30-day trial at www.gofreshbooks.com/jumblethink. That's www.gofreshbooks.com/jumblethink. Chasing that big idea and dream can be difficult. Here at Jumblethink, we're trying to make it easier for you. One of the ways that we do this is through our resources pages on jumblethink.com. We have a recommended reading page where you can find some books that have helped us on our journey of chasing our big ideas and dreams. You can also find our recommendation for podcast equipment. Not only will these amazing resources help you on your journey of chasing your big idea and dream, it also helps to support the Jumblethink podcast when you purchase through those Amazon links. So start your journey today. Swing on over to jumblethink.com, click that resources page, and get going on that big idea and dream you have. Now let's jump into today's episode with Lee Caraher. Welcome to the Jumblethink podcast. My name is Michael Woodward. I am your host. Today is an exciting day in the world of the Jumblethink podcast. It's episode 100. I want to take a moment to thank all of our past guests and you, the listener, for taking time to be a part of the Jumblethink story. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope you've enjoyed the ride too. We have had some of the most incredible guests, and if you haven't already, and you've missed some of those episodes, swing on back and check them out because there is some great wisdom for you, the dreamer, the maker, the innovator, and the influencer to chasing that big idea and dream and making it a reality. So make sure to swing on over to your favorite place to listen to podcasts, click that subscribe or follow button, and go back and catch up on some of those past episodes. 2018 is going to be an amazing year, and we're excited about all that is in store for Jumblethink. It starts out with season 2 of the Jumblethink podcast back in February. We're already recording amazing guests, and we've reformatted each episode to better tell the stories of our guests. Also in 2018, we are launching virtual idea camps early in the year. Super excited about that. Swing on over to jumblethink.com/ideacamp. Sign up for the newsletter. That way you know what Jumblethink's idea camps are all about and how you can get involved. Come back for season 2 of the Jumblethink podcast and hear more exciting news of the things we have planned for 2018. Now let's jump into today's interview with guest number 100, Lee Caraher. Our guest on today's episode is Lee Caraher. She is a CEO, author, speaker, and an expert on creating thriving businesses. She's written 2 books. The first one, The Boomerang Principle, Inspire Lifetime Loyalty from Your Employees. And the second book, Millennial Management, The Essential Guide to Making It Work at Work. Lee is the founder and CEO of Double Forte, which is a 15-year-old digital media and PR firm. So let's jump into today's conversation with Lee Caraher. Hi, Lee. How you doing?
I am great, Mike. How are you today?
I'm great. This is episode number 100, and you're our 100th guest. How cool is that?
Oh, my gosh. That is, I might be a little bit of burden. I'm not sure. I hope I come through for you on episode 100. That is a huge achievement. Congratulations.
Oh, thanks. I'm excited to have you on because you are definitely an expert in your specialty and field. So that's pretty incredible to have you on to share about that. Before we dive into that, I want to get a little bit of your backstory. And you've been in business for 20 years and you've been doing digital marketing and PR stuff for 15 years. Tell us a little bit about your journey into entrepreneurship and creating amazing things.
Sure. Well, I wish I could tell you I've only been in business for 20 years, but it's a little longer than that. So I started Double Forte, which is a public relations and digital marketing firm, in 2002 with my friend Dan,
Okay.
who has since left the company and to go on to much larger things than this is. And basically, I fell into entrepreneurship by necessity, not by design. I had been let's see, I started my career in agencies in Boston. I moved to Los Angeles, was in agencies, and then I moved to San Francisco Bay Area
Yeah.
to take a job at Sega of America, the video game company,
Yeah.
when Sega was about $1.5 billion company. And I was a
Wow.
vice president communications and customer service and events and corporate comm as well, investor relations there
Okay.
for about 5 years, which was an awesome, awesome job. I left that job after they decided to go forward with Dreamcast, which was the company's final hardware platform. I decided to leave the company and I started an agency for Weber Shandwick, which is one of today's largest PR firms in the world.
Yeah.
And I started it on the West Coast. I left that company after 9/11. 9/11 was really a watershed moment for me. I had been on a plane from New York to San Francisco on 9/4, 1 week earlier. And 9/11 just sort of cemented the fact that I wasn't doing what I wanted. And I was traveling much more than I wanted.
Yeah.
And I had these 2 young children, and his husband, and maybe I should stay more close to home than that. So I left that job and was really very intent on going back to a job like the one at Sega. I was going to take a whole year off, but I drove my husband crazy. So basically we decided for the sake of our marriage that I should go back to work. My husband is the chief bacon officer. He does all the work at home. I'm the chief home officer. He's a chief home officer. I'm the chief bacon officer. And he's like, you better go back to work. We're not going to make it if you're going to be at home, like, matching up socks all day long. So I was in the middle of 2 different job hunts. This was in early 2002 and I was very far down the line, when my mom got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer.
Wow.
And my parents lived in Wisconsin. I lived in San Francisco with my family. And it was very clear at that moment in time, she was given 4 months to live. And I was like, well, I guess I have to pull myself out of this jobs hunts because I'm going to go be in Wisconsin with my mom. I mean, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
And I can't go there and take one of these 2 new jobs, because you just can't do that.
Yeah.
So I withdrew from the job hunt and literally got on a plane that day. In the airport, I withdrew from the job hunt and got to Wisconsin. And in the end, my mom ended up living 4.5 years, not 4 months, which was a huge gift.
Yeah.
But it was very clear. That was a clarity moment that said, okay, I need to have a job that lets me be wherever I need to be.
Okay.
So that was to start my own company. And so I did with my friend Dan.
That's very
and
cool.
Spent the first 4 years of the company, 2002 through all of 2002, through 2005, half-time in Wisconsin and half-time in San Francisco.
Wow.
And that's really how I got to be an entrepreneur, because I had to.
That's incredible. Now, you've obviously had an incredible career in the corporate world, and you've seen a lot, you've experienced a lot, and you've had a wealth of experience in the entrepreneurial world, creating your own business. Can you tell us a little bit about the differences and what you learned from each that just has stuck through the years with you?
Yeah. Well, I think the benefit of me having been in agencies and having to start an agency under someone else's umbrella with someone else's money was a huge gift. I didn't recognize it at the time, but I didn't have to worry about where I was getting paid. I didn't have to worry about any of that. I didn't have to worry about creating a brand that existed. Although in the end they had me start a new brand, and that was excellent experience as well, because I had to start a new brand. So I got all this great practical experience on someone else's dime, but I at the same time I over delivered to them, so I don't feel like they had to pay me for that experience at all. And the benefit obviously is not having to worry about your next paycheck, although that does sort of go away eventually, right?
Yeah.
You will always have to worry about your paycheck. And that was, 98 when I started that company. And the economy has changed so drastically since 1998 to today
Right.
that, you have, at my level as GM, president, EVP of a large company, you're always sort of, don't be counting on anybody.
Yeah.
But having the funds from somebody else to create an entity and figure out all the mistakes and go forward and have a safety net. Oh my gosh, what a gift.
Yeah.
What I learned there was scale, right? The how to scale and the expectation of scale. I worked for a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. They were not expecting like little piddly stuff, right?
Yeah,
They were
yeah.
expecting big stuff.
Yeah.
So I definitely learned how to scale. I learned the benefit of process. I also saw where process and scale got in your way from being good. So I had a great experience, and the company was so generous to me. They really were so generous to me. But I just, in the end, wasn't doing what I wanted to do. The benefits of being an entrepreneur, when I started this company, clearly I had to go and be in Wisconsin. So we started the company based on, wanting to create an agency that we like to be at, that I would look forward to being at every day.
Right.
And so we had a different set of rules, right? When you work for someone else, it's their rules. When I worked for myself, it was our rules. And our rules are, we have 4 bottom lines that are, maybe they're not sort of the triple bottom line you hear about in conservation, but,
Okay.
is somebody interested in the work? Because you do better work when you're interested.
Yeah.
Are we a good fit? Do we have the right expertise and the right experience? And do we have the right chemistry to be working well together? Do you pay us? That's always good. And then are you a jerk? Because if you are, I'm not going to work with you.
Yeah.
And obviously, number 1 and number 4 are total, those are just gifts that you can only have when you're your own boss and you're not accountable to somebody else. You don't have to make a number. Number 2 and number 3 are good business processes anyway. But so those, I had the experience of figuring out like what worked for me and what didn't work for me, what gave me agita, what didn't give me agita, what I thought was a stupid mistake, what I didn't think it was, those kinds of things. And I applied them all to this business so that I could create a going concern that would have the least friction possible for me. And for me, the least friction possible was absolutely the goal, because I think friction creates waste.
Yeah.
And when I think about my whole life together, me as a wife and a mom and a daughter of a ailing parent and a friend and a CEO and a mentor and all those kinds of things, how I equally weighted all those things to create this company that actually funds that. That is really the difference.
Before we go much further, let's kind of explore what is it that Double Forte does, and what's your role in the company now?
Mm-hmm. Double Forte, we are a public relations and social media digital marketing firm. So
Okay.
what we do is we represent companies and organizations and people who want to increase the footprint of their brands by engaging with the consumers or people who influence consumers. So that might be social media, creating pages and followings and activities and that kind of stuff. That might be talking with the media and analysts on behalf of our clients, either on the business, the shape of the business media, Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Financial Times, that kind of thing, or consumer media, the NBC Today Show or Oprah Magazine or Men's Journal or something like that, right? And then also creating anything that communicates, the communication that goes through the whole line from the consumer all the way back to sales. So website copy, brochures, webinars, events, that kind of stuff. So anything that communicates to or on behalf of the consumer or the customer in the end. That's what we do. My role today is to run the company. I am excellent in football terms. I'm excellent at the pregame, the kickoff, and the 4th and 1. That's where you want me. That's where I'm the most valuable person on the field.
Okay.
Is during the setup, making sure everyone's set up to kick off, and then at the fourth one, send me and coach. Where I'm not as valuable is in the day-to-day and moving the ball sort of, every 10 yards.
Yeah.
So in this company, I run the company, and that's now a staff of about 35 in 2 offices and then 2 outposts. So we have people in 4 places, and here in San Francisco and also in New York. So I spend about a third of my time in New York City and 2/3 of my time in San Francisco, and really around. And then with my clients, it's setting strategy, being available, thinking longer term with them than the work we're doing right now. What we're delivering every month. I'm sort of thinking about 5 years out with my clients.
Yeah.
And then I think probably the biggest job is to make sure that the people who are here at Double Forte are actively learning, actively delivering, and also achieving their own personal goals within the constructs of our company as much as possible. That's what I do.
That's really cool. And 2 of the greatest cities in the world, 2 cities
Yeah.
I love very much. I lived in Northern California for 13 years, and San Francisco is dear to my heart. New York City, we have an office there. Love New York City, probably my favorite place. So that's got to be a lot of fun to be able to have that flexibility to be in places that you love and places that have a lot going on in them.
Yes. And I think I try not to tell everybody where I'm going, because when I'm in New York, I can't meet everybody I know. So, I sort of later gram everything. And then, but I try to meet, if I'm there for 7 days in a row, then I try to see friends 2 or 3 nights, and then spend some time on my own. I do spend a weekend, because that helps me with a jet lag. I'm not as young as I used to be.
Yeah.
And I have communities there and I have communities here. So that's the hard part, is when the schedule, I wish I was in San Francisco this week. I wish I was in New York this week.
Yeah.
But in the end, it all works out.
You mentioned a few moments ago brand, and that's one of the things that you really specialize with your company, working with other companies or individuals. And I really wanted to ask you a little bit about the difference between a corporate brand and a personal brand, and how so many entrepreneurs, they have the aspiration of being a bigger business, whether it's that dream of being the unicorn or it's the dream of just building something awesome for their friends and family and coworkers. Can you tell us a little bit about personal brand versus corporate brand?
Sure. Well, I think every person today, you have a brand, even if you don't know it.
Yeah.
And as soon as you are, not just a human being, but you're also extended onto social media, you have a brand.
Yeah.
And the importance of a personal brand is several fold. One is, what do people say about you when you're not there? Right.
Yeah.
That's basically what a brand is. That's a brand if you're a company. That's a brand if you're a product. That's a brand if you're a person. And the important thing about having and making sure and curating your personal brand is that a personal brand is what allows you to generate revenue.
Okay.
And that could be generating revenue as an employee. That could be generating revenue as a side hustle. That could be generating revenue as its own entity that you're building all of your revenue off of, right? As, online business, or as a speaker, as an author, all that kind of stuff. And it really does require us all to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And what that means is that you are thoughtful about what's on LinkedIn, and you're thoughtful about what you share in different places, so that when someone who might be a potential customer of yours or a potential employer of yours comes across you, they're intrigued enough to keep looking.
Okay.
And that's really the benefit of the personal brand, regardless if you want to be an employee or if you want to have your own company. For people who are going to be employees for a while, it's super important to have a personal brand that lines up with a corporate brand today. If we think about, what's my mission, what's my vision, what's my purpose on this planet, versus for a company, what's their mission, what's their vision, what's their purpose on this planet. More and more and more, we're going to be seeing people who align with companies that are, in alignment with their own personal personal views, and that the company they work for helps them achieve their personal goals through their employment. And this is really a reverse from 20 years ago when it was the absolute reverse. And really, when we're talking about this, we're talking about the top 25%. The top 25% of employees can get a job no matter what. No matter what the economy, no matter where they are, the best talent will always be needed, as long as those people are the best talent, which means they're staying relevant, they're keeping up, they're changing with the times, all that kind of stuff. And so that personal brand, if that 25%er, that top 25%er works for you, that actually reflects really positively on you, the company.
Yeah.
And you really want it to be a symbiotic relationship, right?
Yeah.
Where you're benefiting and they're benefiting. It's very different in today's world. A company brand is who is that company? What do they stand for? What is their purpose in the world? And where company brands really break down is when what they say is not what they do.
Right.
And they get caught. So every day, when I first started the company, I was like, I don't want to do any crisis work. Crisis work. You can make so much money doing crisis work, but it only happens a Friday at 4.
Yeah.
And maybe the weekend, but it doesn't, crisis work, the phone doesn't ring at Monday at 10 going, I have a crisis. That never happens. But today I have to say with, I started my company before LinkedIn, before Facebook, before Twitter, that now about 25% of our work is crisis because there's a crisis all the time in a 24/7 world, and with every single kind of company. So the problem with a corporate brand is when what you say is not what when you're not walking your talk. And we see more and more and more companies getting into that problem because they haven't thought long and hard enough about who they are, particularly if they're a legacy company and coming current with it, right?
Right.
It's a moving target. And the most important thing for a corporate brand is that it's aspirational, that you never say that you've made it, because no one will believe you.
And if you've made it, it's not going to last long.
Okay, and then tomorrow what happens?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's sort of like the Olympics are going to happen in a few 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's a moment in time, and then there'll be somebody else with. It's a moment in time. You achieve that goal and you go on. And I would say, my experience at Sega really helped me understand this. Sega was the top of the market. When I went to the company, top of the market, where it was sort of Sega, Nintendo, and then Sony got into the mix, then Microsoft got in the mix. And, Sega really was not in a position to compete in the hardware world against Sony and Microsoft because the models were changing so much and all that kind of stuff. So I was, came into the brand as it was reaching its peak, and I left the brand when I knew that it would not survive in its current state, in the state that it was in, by launching the last platform, because we knew it was going to happen. The economics were very clear, but we didn't have a choice. So I was like, I can't be part of that, right? Yeah. I knew what was going to happen. I can't be part of that, although it's going to be awesome to live through because it'll be great. I've already done that. I don't need to do that again. And then they've had, Sega it was just such a wonderful company. They make such great software.
Yeah.
It's taken a long time. So I've been gone 20 years almost. Well, I guess 16 or 17 or 17 years, whatever that is. And it's 15 years before they sort of got back up to a moment where they're again recognized for their great software, even though really their software contribution hasn't changed. So there you go.
Yeah. And for me, I graduated high school in 1999. I look back to when I graduated high school, there was no such thing as a personal brand. Right. You maybe had big name people, you had the big CEOs or the mega Wall Street guy or the big name sales guy who was like just legendary. But for the most part, that wasn't the reality. Is this a generational shift, or is this a culture shift? Is it a technology? What is impacting this? Technology shift.
This is a technology shift. This is the benefit of the internet, or the conundrum of the internet, depending on your point of view, right? With the internet, everybody has a page.
Okay.
Everybody has a place on a platform. So I have my website, I have my Facebook page, I have my personal Facebook page, and my professional one. I have my Instagram, I have my LinkedIn, I have my Snapchat. Oh my gosh, right? So you have your own place, which is your website, which is the most important place, right?
Yeah.
If if you haven't claimed your own URL, go get it now, right? Go get your name. Every single time there's a new platform, get your name even if you're not going to use it.
Right.
Because that's really the most, your name, your identity is the most important thing. And that really, when you can have a place that anybody can get to, right? Anybody can get to in the world. You don't have to physically be there. That's what changed everything.
Right.
The internet changed everything. And then I would say, the evolution of the technology, that mobile, 90% of us are looking at LinkedIn on mobile now, not on our computers, and Facebook and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Really being mobile centric is super important today and will be for the foreseeable future on that. But without the internet, the internet created the culture change, I think. Beyond the technology created the culture change, not the other way around.
Culture is such an important thing, whether it's as an individual, the culture you're creating around you, a business creating a culture internally, a business creating a culture externally that their customers, their clients perceive. In creating culture, how can we harness that for making it really a power of culture that drives our businesses?
I think culture drives a business if you want it to or not, right?
Okay.
And by what I mean by that is you can, create a culture that can power your mission, or you can create a culture that inhibits your mission. And there's, basically there's pretty binary, right? Do you have a culture that helps you pretty seamlessly achieve your goals? Or do you have a culture that you may achieve your goals, but not very efficiently? You create a lot of waste with that culture. So I think, to give you a current example of a culture that is wasteful, but is achieving its goals, would be Uber, right?
Yeah.
Uber, obviously, hitting lots of KPIs around the world. A little more in trouble today than it was a year ago.
Yeah.
But, definitely hitting, huge company, right? Lots of impact, making itself the brand in ride services, right?
Yeah.
But so wasteful in their culture, right? Think about everything they've gone through in 2017 and all of that effort, all of that money, all of that energy, instead of going towards the goal, went towards fixing the problem of the culture, right? And they're not done yet. They got a long way to go.
Yeah.
So imagine if they had not had those problems, had a culture that was relatively seamless in achieving their goal. You can have a tough moving culture and not get into the big crap storm that Uber got into, right? You can.
Yeah.
And the more seamless it is, the more the culture drives profit and drives towards progress, towards your goal, as opposed to creating lots of waste.
Yeah.
That's really the best example of where culture gets in the way of powering your mission. If you have a culture that powers your mission, basically, you are, one way to think about it is a well-oiled machine, right? But not in the old sense. Today's sense, it's very like, we are here for a purpose.
Yeah.
Here's my role in that purpose. My team is doing this. If I can't let my team down, I'm going to achieve, they're going to achieve, we're all going to achieve together. It's fulfilling my own personal dream. And because when you have someone who's working with you, who's excited about not only themselves, their own contribution to whatever they're doing and their own contribution towards their own personal goals, but also excited about the company goal, that is just, that's frictionless.
Yeah.
Right. And you can have a little bit of friction here and there. Everybody, we're human. We're going to have friction every day. Like, I thought that was my yogurt. No, that was my yogurt, whatever. Right.
Yeah.
But it's inconsequential. It doesn't suck up energy, doesn't suck up money, doesn't suck up time. And that's why culture is so important in business. Nothing's more important to profit. Absolutely. Nothing's more important to profit.
Well, it sounds like, and I think back to story after story. You hear this a lot in Silicon Valley, this wasteful culture internally and excessive culture. And part of that's to gravitate great talent to your company. And it seems like culture can be something that sets you up for success, but even beyond that, the culture you create will be the driving force behind your sustainability.
I totally agree. And I do think, there's a lot of like, oh, they have ping pong tables and they give lunch every day. And, there's laundry there
Yeah.
and blah, 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 blah. And the big companies, there's notorious companies. They're not notorious. They're notorious for it, right? They're famous for it. You don't have to be here in San Francisco more than an hour before you see all the buses that are driving people to Google, to Genentech, to Facebook, to Yahoo, really just these hordes of people who are going from San Francisco down Peninsula to work. They're doing that for a reason. One is, it becomes an arms race of perks, right?
Yeah.
And what we found out is that actually perks aren't that important to the total in the overall compensation program.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're much more important to younger people than they are to older people, but they become inconsequential, pretty quickly. The food really matters, but it becomes taxable, then it'll be that goes off the table, right? And the reason they have the food there, the reason they have the laundry there, the reason they have the buses, they want you there.
Yeah.
They don't want you to leave.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Then a great example of this, to the counter of that, is Netflix. So Netflix is bare bones on stuff.
Yeah.
Right? They're bare bones on stuff. They put most of their compensation into pay and benefits. They have unlimited vacation, which means people usually don't take it. But they are very high paid. They treat their team like a sports team, like they always want the best first baseman.
Yeah.
And, and they trade out a first baseman as soon as that first baseman doesn't go. But if you have been at Netflix, you can get a job anywhere, basically.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily true for the other big companies I just mentioned. But they found they don't need the foosball tables. They don't need the nap chambers. They don't need all that stuff to get the best people, because they have such a very driving mission, and because they walk their talk, number one, and two, it's such a benefit to have been at Netflix, that when you graduate from Netflix, when you are, they reward good performance with a nice severance package.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can, those are high performers. Those are the highest of the high. And they really, their document, there's a slide share, which is the Netflix culture. And if people haven't watched that slide share, you should go Google it now. Netflix culture slide share.
Yeah.
You'll get to it.
Yeah. It's super cool.
Is like
I've seen it.
Seminal document for culture in Silicon Valley, which, in terms of this, the highest of the highest performing. And there's not a lot of stuff around those people. Right. They're also fully formed adults. They don't hire people who they don't consider fully formed adults, which means they're really not hiring anybody, younger than 28-ish, So the rest of us are getting people ready to go to Netflix more than anything else.
Yeah, I've had friends that have worked for Netflix, friends that have worked for Apple, Dropbox, all of those places. And it's interesting to see how the culture varies between place, but how mission trumps all of that.
All of it. And particularly today, well, I think in Silicon Valley, that even if you're looking, I want to work for a unicorn, I want to be a billionaire, right? There are lots of those people, but it works only when the mission matters today. I mean, we'll see what happens to Uber. They owe a lot of money. They're, I have a friend, at my company, we do not reimburse for Uber rides anymore after the Susan Fowler thing, unless there's no other option. Okay. Which usually there is. Yeah. And I was saying that to a friend who was getting into an Uber. I'm like, you shouldn't be riding Uber. You should be riding Lyft. Same driver, just different, go through a different system. Yeah. And he goes, you know what? I don't like Uber, so I'm going to use, every time I take a ride, I make them lose more money. I'm like, okay, well, that's another thought.
It's a strange way to do it.
It's a strange way to do it, but all right, if that's how you're going to do it. But I think, people have personal choice as a consumer, and people who are good employees have personal choice in terms of where they work. And no matter what happens with AI, no matter what happens with robots, virtual ones or real ones, the best talent always has choices. And we're all of us will be scrambling for the best talent. And so figuring out that, what you are here, what the company is here for, who do you need to be in your company, and how do you align those people who will help you drive towards your goal with that also helps individuals drive towards their personal goals while they work for you. That's the magic button right there.
You've written 2 books about this. You have some more coming out down the road. The first book was called Millennial Management, The Essential Guide to Making It Work at Work. And then the second book is called The Boomerang Principle, Inspire Lifetime Loyalty from Your Entrepreneurs. I want to start out with talking, so much of what we're talking about here with culture and vision and mission is really a deeper conversation about how you hire, too, in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. I want to start with the millennial generation. They get a bad rap. I think sometimes it is way overrated on the rap that they get, and it's not fair. Mm-hmm. But what is it about millennials that really rubs people wrong in the world of business that gives them this rap, and is it fair?
Yeah. So my first book I wrote so I wrote it out of desperation, actually. I wrote it after we failed miserably at retaining millennials in my business. When I started the company, I didn't hire anybody who didn't have 10 years of experience. So basically everyone was 32 or older. In 2009, we changed the business model to be able to, which required us to hire freshly minted graduates. And I thought nothing of this because in my 2 previous companies, I'd had over 600 people each, most of whom were under 30. Then I hired 6 millennials within 8 weeks of each other, and within 3 months they were all gone. I was like, what? I never had 100% failure in people in my career, and one person could have been I've made lots of bad hires. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying 100% failure. Oh my gosh. Right? One person could have been their problem, but 6 had to be us. And when I started looking at it, I interviewed a lot of people. I didn't even know what a millennial was. I started researching, found out this millennial thing. And everything was so negative, Mike. Oh my gosh. This was, 2010, I guess, when we were actually able to hire people. And oh my goodness. And I decided to ignore it all, frankly, because if you don't have a millennial in your business, and soon if you don't have a Gen Z in your business, you have no business. You got no future.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be thinking negative thoughts before I even wake up about the people who are the future of my business. So I set out to do some research, my own and other people, primary and secondary. And what I found was that some of these things that millennials get a knock on are true. But lots of them are misunderstood.
Okay.
And also they come from, if they're a boomer, so I'm a boomer, I'm the last year of boomer, I'm a cusper as well. I cusp on the last year of boomer and the first year of Gen X, where you're at the last year of Gen X and the first year of millennial.
Right.
And it is folly, I think, to, say all boomers are the same and all Xers are the same and all Zs are the same. But there are definitely some generalities that make sense. And, for instance, all millennials are rude. No, they're not. They may be uninformed, right? Yeah, and I think some good examples of this are, although this year it's probably a little more political than I would usually say, but, rising to sing the national anthem at a sports game. Well, I was growing up, you never had to tell people to do that. And today you cannot go to a single sports stadium in this country without having people say, please rise and take your hat off, because that it was just understood when I was growing up. It was part of our whole, you learned it in school because you're saying the Pledge of Allegiance in the classroom, which we don't do anymore. So in cotillion, I took cotillion. Everyone was in cotillion. We learned how to cut butter by cutting bananas. All this stuff that doesn't exist anymore. They're not rude. They're uninformed. And a good example of that is when I used to recruit by taking people to dinner, like a white tablecloth dinner, to see how they did with me. Yeah. And I did not hire 2 people because they could not eat. And of course they were eating, but they just weren't eating very well. And I didn't hire them. And then 6 months later, I'm like, ugh, that was so dumb. Talk about dumb. I can teach people how to eat, how to use a fork, where to put the napkin, how to order food that doesn't embarrass you, how not to put your lipstick on the table, how not to take a phone call at the table. I cannot teach people how to be good people.
Right.
Or have initiative or be open-minded. That is I have a much easier time teaching people how to eat. So that's what we do now. We teach people how to eat. So they're not rude. They may be uninformed. Just because people are they're not ignorant. Ignorance and uninformed are two very different things, right? And they come with a lot of different shade using them. Another thing is that they're lazy. Boys are just lazy. They're not lazy at all. They just work differently than we did.
Yeah.
They've had the benefit of technology their whole year. They have had more power in their hands than went to the moon since they were 10.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, right? Another thing is that they want a trophy for everything. Well, that is often true, particularly for younger, early people who are early in their careers. And the reasons it's true is because their boomer parents gave it to them.
Yeah.
And they, everybody
and they're still looking for
soccer.
validation too. They're still looking for, do I matter? I'm significant, and do people notice me?
Well, everybody wins soccer didn't start because the 5-year-old said, I want everybody to win. That did not,
Right.
There's a reason for that.
Right.
And the other piece of that too is grade inflation. The average grade point average in college in the United States has risen 1 full point in the last 15 years.
Yeah.
Well, the last 15 years is when millennials have gone and graduated from college. And so that means that people are graduating with over a 4.0 really for 3.0 work.
Yes.
So they get into the workforce and they do what they think is great work, and their boss tells them to do it again.
Yeah.
And they think it's great work because their whole lives they've been doing great work. And how do they know? Because they've been getting more than a 4.0.
Right.
Well, this is one of the biggest disservice education and parenting has done to the millennial generation, is to allow this grade creep to happen across the country. I mean, it's across the country. It has nothing to do with the coast or elite versus big and small, public and private. It's across the country.
Yeah.
And it's the biggest disservice because you show up in the workplace and you get some negative feedback, and most get negative feedback pretty early, and they're shell shocked.
Yeah.
Like, this is my best work.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It's full of typos. It's not done on time. Your format's all wrong. Whatever it is, right? And so yeah, that's some part of that is true, and you have to really work on that really fast to make sure that you're helping people transition out of that really quickly. Another thing that is true is that helicopter parents exist, and kids may not be able to. When I say kids, I mean young people, 20, right out of college.
Yeah.
Many people I talk to in the work that I do in workshops all around the country, they've never had to do anything for themselves.
Yeah.
And their parents are still doing things for them as an adult. And I don't just mean like living at home, because 36% of working millennials do live at home with their parents. What I mean is actually making the phone call to say, I'm sick today. I will not be in, but I'll check my email at noon. Their parents call.
Wow.
Or parents show up for their job interviews. And I used to think this was total crap. Oh, that's an exaggeration, until I started getting these phone calls.
Yeah.
And if I was wherever I speak to a lot of HR people, I'll ask the question, how many of you have talked to a parent of a candidate? All of them raise a hand.
Wow.
Well, this is also not doing a service. So
No.
all these negative things are really, we've helped create them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think the other piece of it too is they're said out of a lot of negativity comes from whoever's talking negatively, their own experience. And particularly in 2010, 11, 12, 13, when there was just so much negativity around millennials.
Right.
This is when, boomers who are working longer than they ever thought they were going to have to, were not working,
Right.
couldn't find jobs commensurate with their experience, were not able to pay for the educations that they had promised their children. I mean, 8 million boomers basically lost their job in 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
And that has a huge ripple effect, right? So if a boomer who is just glad to have a job, is next to a millennial who's leaving at 5:01 because they got to get to yoga, what's going on, right?
Yeah.
So work-life balance is something that millennials have heard their whole lives, because particularly their mothers have been drilling it into their kids' heads, right? And the difference is that we didn't expect to be sitting next to the people who are going to benefit from all our hard work.
Yeah.
And that's just the truth, right? And I'm not very popular with particularly the boomers when I say that. You got to get over it, people.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
The benefit of being the burden or the responsibility of being a pioneer, of making things possible, is that you make it better for the people behind you. What you didn't expect is to be sitting right here next to them, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I think it's all jumbled up, right? And when we can pull it apart and you can have people understand. My first book, I talk a lot about the different generations on purpose. Gen X, so you're on the cusp of Gen X. Gen Xers, smallest generation alive today, right?
Yeah.
35 million to 80 and 79 on either side. More single kids, more single adults or single children than either millennials or boomers. Whiter than boomers or millennials. Lots of latchkey kids are the Gen Xers, right?
Yeah.
That's when moms started going back to work and dual income families. So they had a good, Gen Xers had a great from like 97 to 99. 2000 in there. You didn't have enough. And if you were in San Francisco, you couldn't swing a dead cat. And you would be hitting nothing because there were not enough Gen Xers to fill the jobs. If you had a pulse, you got a job. Well, then the NASDAQ collapsed in 2000, then 9/11 happens, and then Gen Xers can't get work. And this is right when they're at the beginning of their careers, basically between 18 and 28, somewhere in there. And then the economy comes back, takes a while. They finally get hitting their stride again around 2006, 2007. Then boom, 2008 happens. This is when they're 30. 34, 35. And right when they should be hitting their stride and earning potential, and the economy totally collapses. So they've gotten double hit. And so although the numbers would say, oh my gosh, Gen Xers, they have so much opportunity because all these boomers are retiring and there's not, and millennials are so young, there's going to be all this opportunity. There isn't. There isn't for Gen Xers because everything is turned upside down. Boomers are working 10 to 15 years longer than they thought they were going to work. The economy is absolutely different than the one they grew up in. And millennials and Gen Z are flooding the market. So when you understand the different conditions for the different ages, you just have a much better chance of being empathetic with each other. Right? I think when you're empathetic with each other and you understand purpose and what you're trying to accomplish, that just creates a much stronger bond of getting people to understand their dependence on each other in a team so they don't let everybody down. And when you don't let people down, harmony exists. So that's what I'm all about. So that's the first book was all about that, how to create harmony around understanding and not just making it the millennials' fault, but also making it everybody else's fault. And then creating every chapter in the first half of the book is sort of why we're in this condition, all the data. And the second half of the book is what to do with it. And at the end of every chapter, it's, do's and don'ts for managers and millennials, right? So because it should not be one person's responsibility. It's the whole team's responsibility to make it work. And this was actually the fight I had with my publisher. They were like, you can't write a book for two audiences. I'm like, well, I'm only writing a book for two audiences because that's the problem with business books. And with business books is that managers go read them and then they spring a new language on people and the other people are going, what the heck just happened? I want people to read this book together. Any individual can get great stuff out of the book, but if you read it together, then you can co-create the environment that you want. And that's why that first book exists.
Let's touch on the boomerang principle and what it is and why you have adapted it for what you do.
So the boomerang principle is the concept that if a company allows and encourages people to return to them as employees, they have a strategic advantage over those that don't. And this is a concept I've had since 2000. And when I was talking out in the world about my first book, I would go do these keynotes and workshops and all this kind of stuff. And invariably, I would have every single time I would have someone raise their hand and go, I don't want to put any time into these millennials because I'm going to train them and then they're going to leave me and I'm back at square one. So why should I put any effort into these people? And the other piece that was one thing. And the next line would be, as soon as they leave to me, they're dead to me. And they're like, oh no, this is absolutely wrong. So the second book really came out of the reaction to the first book from the people I was trying to get not to talk negatively about the people
Yeah.
who were dependent on their future, right?
Yeah.
And a few things on that. One is, if we don't train the people, of course they're going to leave.
Yeah.
Their whole existence has been about training. Their
Right.
whole existence has been great inflation and trophies and stars and all this kind of stuff, right? So they don't get it. They don't get the lifelong learning that they really expect from their job and from the people around them and their managers. Well, there's the front door, and they're walking right through it as fast as they can.
Yeah.
And so as a business, you got to train them as fast as possible to make them as productive as possible, as fast as possible,
Yeah.
right? Because they're going to leave, right?
Yeah.
And we know they're going to leave us. Millennials have been drilled into their heads, do not stay at a company very long. And by very long, I mean 10 years.
Yeah.
We used to think about careers 10 years here, 8 years there, millennials 4, 5, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Because don't get stale. Their parents all lost their jobs, like I just talked about, right? And if you were at a job more than 6 years, you look sort of stale. Maybe you haven't learned anything, right?
Yeah.
It really it still becomes a problem for the boomer generation. So they know they're not going to stay at a job very long, meaning in boomer terms. They also think that they're going to have more than one career, maybe more than 2, maybe more than 3, maybe more than 4 careers, not just jobs, but actually different functions, right?
Yeah.
So they start their career in a very different point of view than boomers started their career. The boomers were the wait my turn generation. If we just waited our turn, there'd be opportunity, because there was the economy was expanding so fast when boomers were coming into the workplace in those first 25 years. It's unprecedented growth in the world. Actually, over time, that we had in the American economy when the boomers were in their early careers.
Yeah.
So just waited your turn. There was lots of opportunity. Not true for millennials. The whole economy is different today. So we have to make our people as productive as possible, as fast as possible, because we don't have all that time to get them to proficiency, right?
Yeah.
The other true thing is that the more you put into them, the longer they stay.
Yeah.
Right. So it's actually good on 2 points, because if you can keep someone in your company just a year longer than you thought they were going to stay, or they thought they were going to stay, you've won. That is money to the bottom line. That's at least $100,000.
Yeah.
Because no matter what calculation you use, 3, 5, 6 times is whatever the salary is of that person. Every time someone leaves, that would have been a great employee to have you stay.
Yeah.
You're losing money.
Yeah.
So, the mindset needs to be make them, train them, love them, bring them on board, and have a really high expectation of performance. Because you only have a business if you have a business and if you're performing, right? And if you have those things together, people stay longer. And, again, that frictionless, you're going for less friction. The other thing about boomerangs is it is sort of, if you have this, this group of people who imagines not working in places for a long time, having many careers over time, it is a little bit arrogant for companies to think that they can hold people who want to leave and try new things and accomplish new things over their whole careers. Instead, let them go, right? Let them go. Make them help them be as productive as possible while they're there. Help them learn as much as they can, because they're contributing to your bottom line while they're there. And then when they go, wish them well and say, hey, I hope next time you're looking for a job, you call me, and I hope there could be a space here. Because when someone comes back to you, they are more valuable than when they left you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why? Because they've learned other things. They've been in a different environment. They have different points of view. They're going to bring that learning back to your entity. And every time someone comes back, it's validating the place that you are in.
Yeah.
Right? So that's where that came from. And I actually had this, like I said, I had this thought in the year 2000, I think it was that. And that's when the Gen Xers were just, my office was a revolving door. Every week someone would show up and go, Lee, I got another offer and they're going to pay me 20% more. I'm like, oh, here's 20%. I'll just match it. And 6 months later, they'd be back in my office. And it was exhausting, Mike. My gosh, exhausting. And one day I just woke up, and this was directive from HQ to keep them, just keep bodies in their seats. And I was like, ugh, Like, ugh, I was exhausted.
Yeah.
And I just made this decision. I don't care what they're saying. I'm not going to do that anymore. And I'm not going to counter anymore. And I didn't even get to tell my team that this was going to be the new rule.
Uh-huh.
That was before I got any input. Today I'm very high input, low democracy. Then I was no input, no democracy.
Yeah.
I did what HQ said. And this he was a young man, walks into my office and says, Lee, I got another offer. And he was fully expecting me to counter him. Instead of giving a counter, I said, good luck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was so mad at me. Oh my gosh. What do you mean? You're not going to counter me? Like, nope, I'm done. Not doing that anymore. But you countered Joe last week. I'm like, yes, I did. But I'm not doing that anymore. And he was incensed. And I tried to help him. I was like, tell me where you're going. He told me. And I said, okay, here's what you need to know there. And I just said to him, I said, I hope that when you leave there, in the back of my mind, I'm going, which will be in about 6 months, you call me and that we have a job here because I think it'd be great to have you come back.
Yeah.
He ended up leaving not boomerang eligible, right? He was sort of destructive on the way out. So I would not have rehired him.
Right.
But that's where so I had a staff meeting later that day and I said, I'm done. We're not going to counter anymore. And as soon as I stopped countering, people stopped leaving.
Wow. Well, they didn't use that as a chip.
Yeah, absolutely. They had nothing. Just focus on your work. And if you want to, this is what I say to every new employee who comes here at Double Forte, and we're a much smaller business than the one I ran before, right?
Yeah,
I say, I meet with everybody in the first week they're here and I say to them, I'm so glad you're here. You know, we take a long time to hire people. We don't do anything that quickly on that. You went through a lot to get hired. We were really excited. You went through a lot. We went through a lot. And we decided together that it would be a great relationship. And I'm so glad that you came here. And I think you're going to learn a lot here. And you're going to be able to achieve a lot here. And I know you're going to leave me. I know you're going to leave the company. And most people are like, it's my first week. She's already talking about me leaving. And I'm like, yeah. But here's the deal. I wanted Double Forte to be so important to you that you are so proud of having it on your resume. Right. That's my number one goal.
Yeah.
And then I hope you go. When you leave, I will help you. If you come to the moment in time, you're like, you know what I want to do is not matched by what we do at this company. Yeah. Then you'll just tell me. And then I will help you go find another job. Yeah. And about half of the people over 15 years have taken me up on it, and half of them haven't. Wow. But and then I hope you come back. Yeah. And they look at literally, this is the first week of the job, right? They're like, But basically, I've just taken it off the table. Right. I've taken the whole expectation that you'll stay with us forever off the table because I've said, I know you're going to leave. Yeah. I want this time with us to be so productive and so fun, and you're going to achieve a lot. We're going to achieve a lot. We're going to do some great work together, blah, blah, blah. It just changes the whole dynamic. Yeah. So if we can all have that mindset, I really believe the culture and having a boomerang culture, one that people return to, is the sustainable business going forward. Because if culture is what I said before, right? Culture drives the mission, right? You can drive it and be profitable, or you can drive it and be wasteful. Yeah. That culture is going to be the definition of sustainable business, because profit matters if you're publicly traded or if you are privately held.
We've talked a lot about some great topics, and there's a lot of great wisdom that you've shared. You have 2 books and amazing website with lots of resources. How can someone find or connect with you?
The best place to go is my personal website for the personal brand, okay. Lee Caraher, www.leecaraher.com. And from there, you can find my 2 books and some resources there you can download that will give you some, free worksheets on that. You can find my company, Double Forte, off my website. And you can also find my blog where I talk about this stuff all the time. You can follow me on Twitter at Lee Caraher, LinkedIn, and Facebook, Lee Caraher 1.
And we'll make sure to have all those links in the episode notes. So if you missed them, go check it out there. Let's dive into some rapid fire questions.
I'm ready.
All right. Here's the first question. What is one tip you would give someone with a big idea or dream and they don't know where to start?
You have to write it down. Write it down and articulate why you want to do it and what is it going to make a difference in the world. And once you have done that, sort of the plan you can see the plan after that.
What is one change you'd like to see in the world?
Oh, only one.
This
like
question seems to get harder and harder the whole season.
getting harder, man. I would like to see some rationality in our Congress and our White House. How about that?
Okay. What do you want your legacy to be?
I want to have helped people make a big difference in the world.
Who or what inspires you?
My children inspire me. My older child, Michael, he's in college. He's a musician, and he every time he plays, it just makes people so happy. And my younger child, who has special needs, I'm so inspired by him. He's here to make the world happier, and both of my kids have that kind of gift. So, totally inspires me to get up every day.
What are you currently reading or watching?
Currently reading The Power of Onlyness by Nilofer Merchant.
Yeah.
And currently watching, I'm watching the football season because I like football. That's pretty much I'm watching. I don't watch very much television unless it's Game of Thrones.
Yeah, okay. I've got to ask, you mentioned football. Who's your team?
Well.
Or am I going to get you in trouble with that question?
No. Right. So we are officially a New England Patriot household, although I am a Green Bay Packer fan.
Okay. Good old Aaron Rodgers, if he's healthy.
Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
He's my man.
He's a Chico boy. That's where I lived for several years. So,
that's right.
Yeah. I end every episode with this final question. What is one dream you're still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
I would like to own horses.
Oh, cool.
That's what I would like. That is something I have not done yet. I just started riding horses again after a long hiatus. I mean, decades-long hiatus. But eventually I would like to own my own horses.
Lee, it's been a lot of fun having you on the podcast. Thanks for being guest 100, and we wish you the best in everything you do.
Thank you, Mike, so much. What an honor to be your 100th guest. What an achievement.
Well, there it is, episode 100. It's been a lot of fun. First, I want to thank my guest today, Lee Caraher, for taking time out, giving us some insights and wisdom into many really fascinating topics. I also want to thank all of our past guests. It's been a lot of fun getting to know them and to learn from them and share their stories with you. And I also want to thank you, the listener, for taking time out this past year and listening to all of our episodes of the Jumble Think podcast. It's been great getting to know some of our audience and those listening to the podcast, and we look forward to building the Jumble Think community, getting you involved, and helping you on your journey to chase your big idea and dream. For you, the listener of the Jumble Think podcast, FreshBooks is offering a 30-day free trial to give you the opportunity to try out their services. FreshBooks is the easy-to-use invoicing software designed to help freelancers, small business owners, and entrepreneurs to get organized, save time, invoicing, and get paid faster. FreshBooks is built to support the needs of growing businesses, just like yours. On average, customers double their revenue in 24 months. FreshBooks can also help you spend less time on the boring tasks like paperwork, invoicing, and reconciling your expenses, and freeing you up so you can spend your time on the parts of the business you love. To learn more about FreshBooks or to start your free 30-day trial, just go to www.gofreshbooks.com/jumblethink. That's www.gofreshbooks.com/jumblethink. It has been such a fun year creating the first season 1 of the Jumble Think podcast. I want to make sure that you know how you can find the Jumble Think podcast, whether it's getting ready for season 2 or going back and checking out some of those past episodes. The Jumble Think podcast is nearly in every place you might like to listen to your podcast. You can find us on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, Google Play, and I'm super excited to announce you can also find us now on Spotify. Wherever you listen to podcasts, swing on over, search for the Jumble Think podcast, click that follow or subscribe button. That way you can check out those past episodes and get ready for new episodes in season 2. Thanks again for listening to the Jumble Think podcast, and I hope you're as excited as we are for season 2 of the Jumble Think podcast. Thanks again for tuning into the Jumble Think podcast. Now, I want to encourage you over the next couple months until season 2 starts, go out there, make one step, make one forward motion to chase that big idea and dream and create the world you want to live in. Until season 2, thanks for listening and can't wait for you to hear the exciting things in the future.
Les enfants peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant dans quelques mois. Lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps, vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.